Welcome back. After. They made a mistake. The words were ringing in Hannah's ear as she shoves tenners down on the table and shoulders her way blindly out of the cafe. Outside, she leans with her back against the wall, feeling drizzle on her face, her breath coming quick. They made a mistake. Emily chose her words with care, but that they is an euphemism, and they both know it. Because in spite of the police and the forensics experts and the judge and the jury and everyone else involved in convicting John Neville of April's murder, there is only one person that they really applies to. Y'all, that's in quotations. They. Hannah, because it was her evidence that sent John Neville down. She was the one who told first the police and then the courts about his behavior. It was her name on the harassment complaint submitted to the Pelham College authorities, a complaint they brushed under the rug, later issuing fulsome apologies to both Hannah and April's family for their dismissive attitude. Okay. And it was she, Hannah, who saw John Neville that night hurrying towards her out of the gloom, head down away from staircase 7. What they made a mistake really means is you made a mistake. You, Hannah, you convicted an innocent man. And suddenly she cannot do this. She cannot do this anymore, not any of it. Not the memories crowding her head, not the voices in her ears, not the faces in the crowds around her, looking at her curiously as she puts her hand over her face and screams silently, internally, wanting nothing more than for it to all just stop. She becomes aware that she is making a strange sound, like a sobbing moan, and a woman touches her shoulder, her face full of concern. Are you all right, Ducks? Is it the baby? No, she manages, though the words come out like a wail. No, I'm fine. Leave me alone. Maybe you've had a wee bit of a shock, the woman asks kindly, but Hannah cannot take it. She cannot take the woman's well-meaning concern. She cannot talk about any of this. No, I mean just leave me alone, she chokes out. I'm okay. And then she pushes past the woman, stumbling away into the rain. She is not okay. She is very far from okay. But it's not because M's words were a shock. It is the exact opposite. It is because Emily echoed the voice that had whispered in her sleepless ears every day and every night for 10 years. Did she? Did she make a mistake? Before. By the time Michael Mann's term drew to a close, just 8 weeks after it started, Hannah found it hard to remember a time when she had not been a Pelham College student. The corridors and golden stone cloisters were as familiar to her as her old school halls back in Dodsworth, and outside the hall walls of the college, even Oxford, with its off-putting patina of strangeness, was starting to feel like home. She had learned to call exams collections, the Thames the Isis, and that people studying the classics were taking greats. She knew the difference between rectors, provosts, and wardens, and the place of Pelham's own master in that subtle pecking order. She had her favorite pubs and curry houses and was beginning to figure out the shortcuts of winding back, winding back ways that students use for slipping between colleges and making their way to Bodleian when the college library didn't suffice. She let Emily drag her around that Saturday morning flea market and Hugh take her to the History of Science Museum. She went to Oxford Union debates with Ryan, followed by furious political discussions in the pub after, and she adopted the weary tolerance the older students displayed towards the ever-present tourists with their iPhones and their selfies. She even got used to April, to her constant Instagram snaps, to her face staring out at the Talter gossip pages, to the half-drunk bottle of, crowding the mid-fridge. The scent of her strange, heavy perfume. After a few weeks, it felt normal to find Vivian Westwood coat discarded underneath the sofa or Vera Wang camisole crumpled up with the laundry. Her trainers tangled companionably with April's Jimmy Choos in a pile beneath the coffee table. Only two things she did not get used to. One was John Neville, who remained a constant, disquieting presence, hovering at the edge of her perception. She found herself taking the long way to the library to avoid passing the porter's lounge, going in to collect her letters when she guessed he would be off shift, and entering college by the back gate to avoid passing through the main entrance. The other was Will. Somewhat to everyone's surprise, it appeared that April and Will were now an item. It was never spoken, never articulated that April was anything as pedestrian as Will's girlfriend. But from the first night when they had played strip poker together, Will became a semi-regular overnight guest in April's half of the set. And it was not uncommon for Hannah to wake to the sounds of his deep voice coming through the walls, or to leave her room in the early morning, long before April usually awoke, to find him on their sofa drinking coffee and looking across the dew-drenched quad. The first time Hannah had woken to find Will sitting alone in the set, he jumped like a guilty person, caught doing something he should be ashamed of. "I'm sorry," he said quickly. He stood up, crossing his arms over his bare chest. He was wearing nothing but jeans, and she had to force her eyes up away from his lean, muscular body and the fine ribbon of dark hair that arrowed to his belt buckle. "I'm really sorry. I didn't think you'd be up yet. I didn't want to wake April. I'll go." "Hey, it's fine," Hannah said. She focused on a point just past Will's right ear. "You don't need to go. Finish your coffee." "Are you sure?" He looked at her doubtfully. "I don't want to take the piss. I don't want to take the piss. I mean, this is your room. I don't know how I'd feel about a stranger hanging around uninvited." Hannah found herself laughing at that in spite of herself, and for the first time she found herself able to look Will in the eyes sympathetically to his awkwardness. "Will, first, you're hardly a stranger, and second, you're not uninvited. April invited you, but you didn't," he pointed out. She smiled. "Okay, I invite you, Will. Is that better?" "Okay," he said, and then his face broke into a grin. "Vampire rules, you know. I'm over the threshold now. You can't get me out." "Don't suck my blood," she said lightly. There was a moment's charged pause. Then Will coughed, breaking the tension. "Still, I better get a shirt on. Pretty sure vampire rules don't entitle me to lounge around half naked." "Don't worry," Hannah said. "I was heading out for a run anyway. I like to go in the morning before the river paths get too busy." "Sounds nice," Will said. And then he smiled, and Hannah realized that she wasn't having to force her gaze away from his chest, because her eyes were locked on his face, on the way the lines at the corners of his mouth crinkled, on his crooked nose and the shape of his lips. "I'll probably be gone by the time you get back," he added, and she nodded and made herself look away. "Sure." Her voice sounded croaky in her own ears. See you later then. Maybe at breakfast?" "Maybe at breakfast," he echoed. And she laced up her trainers and left, taking the 4 flights at a run. But he wasn't gone when she came back. Not completely, at least. He was gone from the living room, an empty coffee cup the only sign of his presence. But as she opened the door to the set, the sound that greeted her from behind April's door was unmistakably one of two people having sex. Hannah found herself wincing as she tiptoed across the living room to her own door. Once safely inside her bedroom, she shut the door and turned on the radio, a notch louder than necessary. She had been planning to take a 10-second shower, then work on her essay in her room. Instead, she showered, left her towel hanging on a peg in the communal bathroom, and went straight down to breakfast with wet hair and scrubbed face. But to her surprise, when she walked through the door to the hall, Will was there, eating a full English. "So who in her bedroom?" He saw her as she came in and waved a fork. "Hannah, over here." He had nearly finished, she saw, and as she moved across, hopefully it's not John. Oh, sorry. He had nearly finished, she saw, and as she moved across to him, frowning and trying to figure out how he gotten down here so fast, let alone finish the best part of eggs, bacon, sausage, mushrooms, and beans, he swallowed a mouthful and spoke. Could I be cheeky and get you to grab me another coffee if you're going up? He held up his empty cup. Hannah took it, feeling slightly dazed. Sure. She had turned half away from the table when she remembered something and turned back. Sorry, how do you take it again? I should know, but black, no sugar, thanks. Hannah nodded and moved away to join the queue at the hatch, but she could not shake the feeling of unease as she stood there. Will's still warm cup in her hand waiting to be served. Had she been in the shower longer than she thought? But no. That was ridiculous. Will was, well, if not April's boyfriend, at least a significant figure in her life. And she had seen him going into April's room herself that very morning. She had made a mistake, that was all, just a silly mistake. Okay. After. In the restaurant, Hannah looks at her phone again, gnawing at a breadstick. Wednesday night is date night. It always has been, virtually since she and Will moved in together. When they realized that between books, events for Hannah, and accountancy exams for Will, they needed to carve out time for each other. For the first few years, it was nothing fancy. Fish and chips on summer evenings in Prince Street Gardens, the castle glowing red gold in the sunset, and the hill shining in the distance. Popcorn and movie at the Edinburgh Film House, then McDonald's on the way home. Lately, as Will has moved up the ranks at Carter and Price, the restaurants have become nicer, and tonight's is one of their favorite, a cozy little Italian place tucked along one of the winding medieval lanes leading down from the grass market not far from Tall Tales. But Will is late. And now, as Hannah stares down at the menu, she knows practically by heart, pregnancy hunger growling in her stomach. She notices the prices for perhaps the first time since they started coming here. It's not cheap. In fact, tonight is going to set them back about the same amount as their weekly supermarket shop. They are going to have to cut when the baby comes. Can I get you anything to drink, or are you still waiting for your companion? Says the waiter, passing her table with his order pad in hand. Hannah is just about to reply when a tall figure appears behind the waiter's shoulder. Will, relief washes over her. Sorry, Will says, half of her and half to the waiter. I'll order fast, I promise. Can you come back in 5? The waiter nods and departs, and Will bends to kiss her. As his lips, still cool from the crisp evening air outside, meets hers, she closes her eyes, feeling her body go liquid with it. That need that never goes away, that still unbelieving realization that Will is her husband. I love you, the words come out in spite of herself, and he smiles, holding on to her hand as he takes his seat, his strong fingers linking with hers as he picks up the menu with his free hand, scanning the specials. So he ain't say he love her back. He is her kryptonite, she thinks as she watches him read, one thumb absently stroking the back of her hand. She has never told him this, but she knows how Superman feels when they brandish the green stick in his face, the way his strength desert him and his limbs go weak, because she feels exactly the same way when Will touches her. Dazed, stupid, meltingly soft. And it has always been so, ever since that first day in the hall at Pelham. He has always had that power over her. Sometimes the realization makes her almost afraid. After they have ordered, Will runs his hand through his black hair, making it stick up like a hedgehog's spine, and signs. I'm sorry I'm late. Massive cock up with a client account that needed sorting, and I couldn't really run out. It's fine. She says, because it is now that he's here. I get it. Now it's time to be coasting. What with the partnership thing? I know, but today of all days, I'm fine. I didn't sit at home all day moping. I went to the park, then the cafe. I talked to mom. She's going to come for a visit sometime, bring in some maternity clothes. And well, actually, she pauses. For some reasons, the words don't quite come naturally. I also talked to Emily. Emily. Will raises an eyebrow. She's not sure if he's surprised or just making conversation. Yes, she called me. In fact, she's seen the news. Did you know she was back in Oxford? Yes, I told you, remember? I heard it from Hugh. Hugh is the one person from college they both still see regularly. He and Will are best friends. Did I know that? Did we know that? Yeah, we knew that. Okay. Have been since they were little prep school boys in short trousers, and perhaps because of that, their bond survived the earthquake of April's death. It helped that Hugh also lives in Edinburgh, in a beautiful bachelor's pad in the elegant Georgian quarters near Charlotte Square. He and Will play cricket for a local team in the summer months, and Hugh comes into bookshops most Saturdays buying whatever literature hardback the Sunday Times has recommended. The three of them met up for dinner or brunch every few weeks. But until today, she had no idea that Hugh and Emily were in contact at all. They weren't even particularly friends in Oxford. They hung around together because Will was dating April, and Hannah was April's roommate, and Emily liked Hannah. But beyond that, they had nothing in common. Hugh was shy and bookish, and 13 years at an all-boys school had left him awkward around girls. Emily was sharp and spiky, with absolutely no time for the kind of old-fashioned courtness Hugh had been brought up to think were necessary when dealing with women. Emily said he'd been down for the gaudy. Hannah says now, it's weird. I would never have put them down for the ones to keep in touch. I know. Will takes a breadstick and crunches it. They were never that close at Pelham. In fact, I always got the impression she thought he was a bit of a joke. He is a bit of a joke, Hannah says, but not unkindly. She doesn't mean it as a put down. It's just that Hugh is, well, he's Hugh. Posh, floppy hair, smudged glasses. He's dead poet society, crossed with 4 weddings and a funeral. Everyone's caricature. Hold on, that's a word. Caricature of a public school boy grown up. That's just the surface, though, Will says, and she nods, knowing it's not just Will defending his best friend, it's also true. Because although Hugh may come across as slightly effete, what? I got another word. Effete, I think. The reality is very different. Underneath the self-mocking veneer, Hugh is tough and driven and very, very ambitious. It's why he's done as well as he has. Will's family is old money. Not that there's much of it left now, apart from some land and a few paintings. April's was new. Her father came from nowhere, a brash Essex boy who made his fortune in the city and cashed out at the right time. But Hugh's family were neither, in spite of his schooling. His father was a GP, his mother a housewife, county folk who scraped together the money for their only child's education, going without themselves, even as they pinned all their hopes on him. That sacrifice is something Hugh has been trying to justify ever since he left Pelham. And now, to a large extent, he has succeeded. He followed his father's footsteps as far as graduation, but then went swiftly and lucratively into private practice. He's now the head of a very successful plastic surgery clinic in Edinburgh, One of his first clients was April's mother. Hannah doesn't know how much he earns, but she can tell from his flat that he must be extremely comfortable. You don't get a place like that in central Edinburgh for a small change. Why are they talking about Hugh? Okay. So, what was she saying? Will continues, and Hannah has to drag her mind back to Emily's conversation. The sinking feeling in her stomach returns. She was saying, she breaks off, the waiter has arrived with their starters, and there's the moment's respite as they sort out whose is who. But then Will prompts, she was saying, she was asking if I was okay, and yes, Will says. He's looking worried now and puzzled and maybe slightly irritated too. It's hard to tell. There's this journalist. He's been trying to get in touch with her and me. He's a friend of Ryan's and he thinks, oh God, this is hard. She puts her knife and fork down, takes a deep breath, forces the words out. He thinks there might have been a mistake. He thinks Neville's conviction was a miscarriage of justice. Bullshit! Will doesn't even stop to consider her words. His reaction is swift and decisive, and he slams his hand down on the table, making his plate and cutlery clatter and jump. The people at the neighboring table look around in surprise, and Hannah winces. But Will doesn't lower his voice. Utter bullocks. I hope you told Emily not to speak to him. She already has, Hannah says, her voice practically a whisper as if to compensate for Will's. And then, seeing Will's expression, she backtracks. Not about Neville. They seem to have talked mostly about Ryan. But don't you think, she stops. Don't you think it's at least a possibility? Is what she wants to ask. But she can't quite bring herself to say the words. It's been hard enough turning them over and over inside her head without articulating them. Sweetheart, Will puts down his cutlery and reaches across the table, holding her hand, forcing her attention. Hannah, don't do this. Don't start second-guessing yourself. And for what? Just because Neville's dead? His death changes nothing. It doesn't change the evidence. It doesn't change what you saw. Ha. And that's the thing. She knows he's right. Of course he's right. The fact that Neville went to his grave protesting his innocence proves what exactly? Nothing. There have been plenty of murderers who denied their guilt until their dying day. But the truth is that Neville could have been heading towards parole by now. If he had played the game, accepted his guilt, done his time. Instead, he spent the years after April's death protesting his innocence and launching futile appeal after appeal after appeal, all of which achieved nothing except to keep his name in the press and public anger high. Would a guilty man really have shot himself in the foot like that? Hannah, Will says. He squeezes her hand, forcing her to meet his eyes. Hannah, sweetheart, you know that, right? This is not your fault. I know, she says. She withdraws her hand, shuts her eyes, rubs at the headache that is beginning to build beneath the plastic nose rest of her glasses. But when she shuts her eyes, it's not Will's face that she sees, full of love and concern. It's Neville's. And not the Neville that has dogged her since university, glowering, full of belligerent defenseness. It's the one she saw the other day. That hunted old man staring out of the screen with a kind of pleading fear. And she knows what Will said is not true. This is all her fault. All of it. Before. Oh, Hannah, Dr. Meyer says, as Hannah closed her folder and stood up, ready to leave at the end of their session. Could you stay back for a moment? Miles, you're free to go. Hannah's tutorial partner nodded and left, leaving Hannah standing slightly awkwardly, wondering what Dr. Myers was about to tell her. Had she slipped up? He had seemed pleased with her essay this time, but the same couldn't be said for some of her earlier efforts. It was a moment before she realized Dr. Myers was talking and she wasn't paying attention. Little drink party, he was saying. I always have one at the end of every term. I invite a few particular promising students along. We make connections. It's rather fun. Hannah stood, holding her breath, not wanting to make an assumption that might swiftly be shot down. Particularly promising students? Was he really talking about her? But surely he wouldn't have mentioned the drinks party if he didn't intend to invite her. It's this Friday, he said, very informal, just a glass of sherry in my rooms. At least you won't have any trouble finding it. Hannah gave a laugh and then, lacking anything else to say, said, thank you so much. Yes, I'd love to come. Wonderful, 8 p.m. Can I bring anything? No, just yourself. Outside in the corridor, she leaned against the wall, feeling a smile spreading across her face. Particularly promising. Could it really be true? The big question, of course, was what to wear. Very informal, Dr. Meyer had said, which was the worst kind of invitation. At least with the ones that said white tie or academic gown, you knew where you stood. Very informal could mean anything from party dress to jeans. Jeans, April said decisively when Hannah asked her advice, and a pleated poplin camisole, very high at the neck, no sleeve, single pearl button fastener behind it. Business at the front, party in the back. Yes, Hannah said impatiently, but I don't have a pleated something, a top like that. Friday is 2 days away. I haven't got the time to go shopping. Or the money, she thought, but did not say. Such considerations didn't weigh with April. You may not have one, April said, but I have. Come through here. Hannah had not been into April's bedroom for several weeks, with a joint sitting area. They didn't need to go into each other's rooms to socialize, and since Will, was a frequent visitor, Hannah was always half afraid of what she might find if she knocked. Now she was amazed afresh, not just at the difference between April's room and her own, a difference which had seeped out into the living room, where the boring regulation university furniture was slowly becoming replaced or supplemented by April's own luxurious, expensive taste, but by the mess. There were clothes everywhere, designer garments piled up in a corner, beaded tops slung over lamps, Jimmy Choos hanging casually by a strap from a desk chair. But not just clothes. Half-drunk cups of coffee languished on the windowsill, sporting an extravagant coating of mold. She nasty. It be like that. Books were scattered like splay-winged birds. An open bottle of pills spilled across the nightstand. A half-eaten donut leached grease into a pile of essays, and a makeup palette lay burst open on the rug. Colored powder ground into the carpet pile. In one corner, a lamp burned low and golden, and April clutched her head. Oh shit, every time I come in here, I'm shocked at how awful it is. I wish I could pay Sue to sort it, but she's such a bitch. She's not a bitch, Hannah said reflectively. She's just busy. But she was eyeing the chaos and silently agreeing that it was going to take more than April to sort this out. There were weeks of mess here, and university rules stated that they had to clear their rooms for the Christmas break. How do you find anything? Well, at any rate, I know where the camisole is. I tried it on, but it's too big for me, so you might as well take it. She picked her way through the mess to the far corner and near a long gilt-edged mirror that looked like an antique and began rooting through a pile of clothes there. Aha! Her voice was triumphant as she held up a crisp starched top in old ivory. Here it is. It'll be perfect. Try it on. Go on. She made no move to turn around or give Hannah her privacy, so after a slightly awkward pause, Hannah turned her back and stripped off the t-shirt she was wearing, sliding the camisole over her head. Then she turned around. So? She could tell at once, even without looking in the mirror, that April was right. The top suited her. April's expression told her that. She clapped her hands together and spun Hannah around so that she could do up the single mother of pearl button at the back of Hannah's neck. "Oh, that is perfect," April breathed. And seriously, she turned Hannah around again, facing the mirror. "Bend over." Hannah bent obediently, and April tooted. "Well, you can't wear a bra. The whole point of that top is the back. Look, when you stand straight, it's totally demure." She demonstrated, holding up a hand mirror so that Hannah could see behind herself. "And when you bend or twist," Hannah did so, seeing the sliver of cream spine that immediately showed between the pleats. It was indeed completely spoiled by her very basic supermarket bra showing through the gap. "But you don't need a bra. Oh, you're going to look gorgeous." "Thank you," Hannah said rather awkwardly. "And I mean, should I dry clean it before I return it? Wash it?" "I told you," April sounded impatient. "It's yours." "But April," Hannah plucked at the tag still dangling from an inner seam. "I can't take this. It's brand new. If I don't cut the tags, you could return it." And her eyes alighted on the price. "Jesus Christ, April, this was 800 quid. "I'm not going to return it," April said carelessly. "So if you don't take it, it's just going to rot in the corner there." She stood back, appraising Hannah seriously, and then said, "The jeans are fine, but you need proper shoes. Have you got any heels?" Hannah nodded and went through to her own room to find the pair of black heels her mom had brought her for formal events and interviews just before term started. When she returned wearing them, April made a face of barely concealed disgust. "Look, I don't mean to be rude, but those shoes are an insult to that top. What size are you?" "6," Hannah said. She knew her expression must look. Mm. Mm-hmm. The shoes were basic, but they looked totally inoffensive to her eyes. And so what if she couldn't afford April's designer sandals? Not everyone was their heir to a city fortune. But April wasn't paying her any attention. She was too busy rooting through the tangle of shoes in the bottom of her wardrobe. 2 pairs of Louis Vuittons flew past Hannah's knees, followed by a single Jimmy Choo sandal, and then April straightened, holding a pair of deep green mono Blahniks. They were crocodile embossed leather, open-toed, and about 3 inches higher than Hannah's usual style. "There, these are alone. By the way, they're one of my favorite pairs. But don't worry about scuffs. I've worn them outside already." Done protesting, Hannah slipped her feet into the shoes. They were extremely high, and for a moment she teetered, but then she caught her balance and stood. Looking at herself in the mirror behind her, April pulled Hannah's hair out of its clip and shook it loose over her shoulders. A different person looked back at Hannah from the mirror, taller, more confident, rocking her designer top and shoes like she was born to it. The shoes picked out the green in her eyes, and the ivory set off her pale skin and dark hair. She looked like she was beautiful. She looked like she was one of April's friends. "There," April said, her face so close to Hannah's that Hannah could feel her breath on her ear. "You look majestic." It was just a couple of days later that Hannah found herself putting the poplin top back on, braless this time, and making up her eyes with smoky eyeshadow and liners. Finally, she put on a swipe of dark red lipstick, but she knew as soon as she'd done it that it was a mistake. It made her mouth look comically huge, and with a dramatic eye, the effect was clownishly overdone. Instead, she wiped it off with a tissue, leaving a faint flush that somehow made her mouth look as if she had just been roughly kissed. The unaccustomed stranger from the other day stared back at her from a little mirror above the desk. April, she called, picking her way carefully out into the living room. What do you think? There was a rattle of a door handle, and April appeared in the doorway of her room. She was wearing makeup herself, pale face and scarlet lips, and a devastating simple black silk sheath that showed the hollows of her collarbones and the lines of her white throat and made her golden hair glow like it was electrified. Perfect, she said, smiling broadly. You look $1,000,000. I ought to, Hannah said ruefully. She looked down at the shoes. I better not ask how much these cost, or I'll be terrified of snipping a heel. Are you going out? I am, April said, and her smile turned wicked. But not far. I'm coming with you. What? Hannah felt her insides turn. Oh, April, I'm sorry. It's a party for his students, and not all of them. He didn't invite Miles even. I'm sorry. I feel really bad. I should have explained. You did, April said. She knelt down beside the mini fridge in the corner of the room where Hannah kept the milk for her morning coffee and pulled out a bottle of Dom Perignon. But I don't care. I'm coming. Oh, don't worry, she added as Hannah began to protest. I'll make it clear you didn't invite me. But gate crashers is very favorite occupation. But gate crashing is my very favorite occupation. She straightened, tucking the bottle under her arms. Anyway, Dr. Meyer is rather dishy. I'm not letting you have him all to yourself. For a long moment, Hannah just stood, looking at April in helpless exasperation, unsure whether to be angry or push back, and then she caved. Fine, I guess I can't stop you, but don't follow me in or it'll look like I invited you. Fine, April shot back. In fact, you know what? I'll lead the way. And before Hannah could stop her, she opened the door to the set, stalked across the hallway, and rapped loudly on Dr. Meyer's door. The door opened, and the sound of chamber music carried across the hall on a wave of student laughter, followed by Dr. Meyer's voice, full of welcome and bonhomie. Hello! And then slightly puzzled, I'm sorry, can I help you? Hi. There was no embarrassment in April's voice, and peering through the crack in the door, her face flushed with preemptive mortification. Hannah saw her stick out a hand and lean confidently in towards Dr. Meyer. I'm your neighbor, April. I heard a rumor that your end-of-term drink parties were the hottest ticket in Pelham, but my friend, she paused just long enough to make Hannah nervous, Joanne told me that I would never get in because I wasn't clever enough. She bet me a bottle of champagne that I wouldn't get past the door, but I thought perhaps I could persuade you to drink the winnings. She held out the bottle of Dom Perignon and trailed off, smiling up at Dr. Myers, her expression as an intoxicated mix of pleading adoration and just a tiny little touch of flirtation. Well, Hannah heard Dr. Meyer's voice take on an amused quality, and she saw him look April up and down, taking in the willowy limbs, the slim, fragile neck, and the expensive sheath with Hannah strongly suspected no underwear beneath. Finally, his eyes aligned to the champagne. Dom Perignon. Well. We can't have Joanne furthering the reputation of this college as an elite establishment, can we? The door opened slightly farther, and Dr. Meyer stood back. April gave a dazzling smile and stepped forward into his room. But as she did, she turned momentarily, and Hannah saw her give the smallest of wink over her bare shoulder, and then she disappeared and the door closed behind her. Okay, so that's the end of those chapters. Okay, so let's go back. Who was in the room with April? If Will was downstairs in the cafeteria, was it John? Was it Dr. Myers? Was it Hugh? Was it Ryan? Who was it? Okay, so I don't know who it could be, but those are the only guys that, were mentioned. And then second, the next thing is, why was they discussing Hugh so much? Is Hugh a bigger factor in this story? Because he's the odd man out kind of thing. And then Will and him are best friends. And then they use the word they. Like all of them know something. And I kind of think they all know something because of Will's reaction to how Hannah is feeling about the death of Neville and them making a mistake, that she made a mistake. And to add to that, she said that Will was her kryptonite, right? So she ended up doing whatever he said. And the way he, snapped at her at the restaurant, and then he had to calm it down. It's like she under his spell, and he don't want the spell to break. Like, and then to add on top of that, Will is suspect number 3 because maybe he did think him and April were exclusive, and he found out that there was somebody else hitting the sheets with her. And then he could have gotten jealous and did what he did to April. And because Neville was a creep, and Hannah must have told Will that Neville was a creep, they all made it seem like John did it. Okay, so that's that theory. And why is April so nasty? That's disgusting. But it don't stop people from coming in that room, though, do it? Like, people who with money and people who just got it all just be doing the most, right? And so now at this party with Dr. Myers, she got in there real easy, like, didn't she? But anyhow, that's it for these chapters. I shall see you in the next one. Bye for now. Oops, I forgot I had some words that I didn't know. So welcome to the definition portion of the video. Let's get to the first word, which is spelled, hold on one second, which is spelled Caricatore. And this is how it is pronounced. Caricature. Caricature.
Caricature.
Caricature. Okay, it's a noun. A picture, a description, or imitation of a person in which certain striking characteristics are exaggerated in order to create a comic or grotesque effect. One more time.
Caricature.
Caricature. Okay. Where's the beginning of this sentence? He is a bit of a joke, Hannah says, but not unkindly. She doesn't mean it in a put down. It's just that Hugh is, well, he's Hugh. Posh, floppy hair, smudged glasses. He's Dead Poets Society crossed with 4 weddings and a funeral. Everyone's caricature. Caricature of a public school boy grown up. Okay, so that's that word. The next word is spelled Effete. This is how it is pronounced.
Effete.
Effete. Okay, effete. Where is the sentence? Okay, because although Hugh may come across as slightly effete, the reality is very different. I forgot to read the definition. Okay, so it's an adjective. It's affected or overly refined. Okay. So then there's one more word, and it is spelled Mutiny. O-U-S. And this is how it is pronounced.
Mutinous.
Mutinous. It is an adjective of a soldier or sailor refusing to obey the orders of a person in authority. And the sentence is 6. Hannah said she knew her expression must look mutinous. Okay. All right, so that's the end of the definition video. I shall see you in the next video. Bye for now.